welcome to We Never Met, the podcast where I have an interesting stranger on every single week. And today we have...
Meghan Stark.
Yeah, you nailed it. You started off strong.
Awesome.
So to give people like a quick idea of what you do, I mean, I know like kind of what you do, you know, from researching as much as I could on the internet.
Yeah.
But what would you tell people that you do? Like, what would they know you for, I guess?
Sometimes it depends on how people find me, but the most common ways people find me online is through Instagram and YouTube. But
yeah,
really, I'd say 80% of my time is spent doing web development, photography, and content strategy.
Yeah. Is that your 9-to-5?
Yeah.
job?
I don't know if you could call it a 9-to-5.
Yeah.
I work for a consulting firm based in Houston.
Oh.
So I've worked remote and done kind of like contract work
Sure.
and stuff all on my own. Basically since college. The last time I had a traditional job where other people are telling me what to do, when to do it, and when to come in to do it.
Yeah.
Was probably like 2013 or 2014.
Oh, wow.
So it is tough to, so technically, yeah, and with the territory of being a freelancer, it's almost past 9-to-5 sometimes, but then also certain days it's 10 to 2 and then go do something fun, especially when the weather's getting nicer. So
Right. Yeah. And you are, I mean, obviously really into motorcycles. Yeah.
because I couldn't call myself like an expert because I'd say I'm, a hobbyist rider, a street rider, because there is a different degree to it. It's not just getting around like a car. It is a subculture. Yeah. But I certainly am not like a gearhead who knows the ins and outs. I'm not an engineer. Right. I'm just an enthusiast. That's probably the word. I think yeah. That's just what I should have led with. I'm a motorcycle enthusiast.
Yeah. That's what I do.
Just very enthused.
Yeah. When did you first start getting into motorcycles?
I started riding dirt bikes out at my uncle's property. He has 120 acres of farmland.
Wow.
Part of it he leases out, so it wasn't, full rain all over. But he owned a big piece of land, and he used to race Honda motorcycles when he was younger, and I think there was a kind of an accident that spooked him out of it. But he got my brother and I into it. He had a bunch of small displacement motocross bikes around, and so we would kick around there, and that was a lot of fun. But I kind of had to pump the brakes on that because at the same time I was an Irish dancer, and my mom would always you're out there riding motorcycles and getting very bruised up. And Irish dance is almost like beauty pageants meet the Olympics or something, or like gymnastics almost. Right. I mean, it's a kind of dance, but there is this kind of aesthetic element to it. Right. Most people wear wigs, and most of the, at least past the child age dancers will wear makeup and stuff, and they're like fake tan and all these things. Right. Which is funny because Irish people are notoriously pale.
Right. So why tan?
I think like one year a California team won worlds or something like that.
Everyone's like, we got a tan now.
Or just, beauty standards change and they leak in all sorts of subcultures. But I think, that'll come and go. So yeah, I had to do all this like fake tanning and keep my legs nice. So I kind of had to, and there is no off season. It's not like, a lot of people would say, is it done in the fall, or is it done? It's just year round. And if anything, it picks up in the summertime. So, and that would be the
all
perfect,
the festivals and things like that.
Well, we do Irish dance or Irish Fest. And then they're just like an influx of competitions for sure. Yeah, I did competitive Irish dance solos. And I liked the performances way better. I'm not a very competitive person, so I just liked having fun. And it's a very kind of like rowdy kind of dance to do. So
like the environment or the actual dance? People
are like hooting and hollering, and that's encouraged, especially at performances. Maybe not so much at shows. People like clap politely. At competitions, they clap politely, but it's definitely, if you've seen that scene in Titanic when the rich lady goes down with Leonardo DiCaprio, Kate Winslet. I don't remember the character's name. Oh, Jack and the other one.
Yeah, I just know Jack.
But yeah, so I think he's like one of the Irish kids that came over, and they're all dancing, and that's pretty much what it's like. A little bit more like composed, but that's like Ceilidh dancing basically, which is a group dance.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I studied in Ireland for a little bit, but
cool.
I never Irish danced.
Where did you study in Ireland?
Limerick.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's on the west side of Ireland. Yeah. But yeah, so I guess from there then, when did you pick it back up? You're like, I'm done with Irish dance now. Like,
yeah, all through college, I was musing with the idea, but I kind of fell a little bit victim to other people's opinions about it. So many people tried to discourage me from it. It's funny, like all the things that people would tell me not to do in college is basically all that I do all the time now.
Why did they discourage you from it?
I don't know, because it's dangerous and people are worried about you, but also bicycling is dangerous and driving a car is dangerous. And I'm I
got a lot of gripes with bicyclers, to be honest. not motorcycle riders, like bikers.
Yeah.
Because like, especially around here, they don't
obey traffic laws for some reason.
But then they get mad when like people aren't, like they're in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
You know, driving down like a road, but then they run a red light. So it's like,
I see the red light thing bothers me.
Are you not?
Yeah.
You know, pick
the
one.
Portlandia episode. I think it's just a Porklandia. But the Portlandia episode.
Looney Tunes version.
Yeah, oh my gosh. The Porky Pig. Yeah. Basically, yeah, the bicycle rides. And I mean, it's cool. There's an overlap between like two-wheel culture. So a lot of bicyclists will come up to me and talk to me. And I think it's really cool. A really cool thing too, but it is funny like what they're allowed to do, and I feel that way about mopeds too in terms of parking. So bicyclists in terms of like stoplights and stop signs and all that kind of stuff, and like what lane, and then mopeds in terms of parking, because you can put a moped anywhere apparently, like on right on the sidewalk. And if I put my Ducati on that, I'm getting a ticket for sure.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
So and they're functionally like the same thing, and sometimes they don't even take up that much different space. So I've seen mopeds that are like bigger than my bike, just like size wise.
Yeah, it's like
the engine's not bigger.
It's the culture around them, I think.
Yeah,
it seems as more of I don't even know. I don't want to say necessarily they're the do-gooders that ride mopeds, but it seems like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's maybe less of a stigma, or because the barrier to entry is lower and there's not such a distinct culture, it's more like equalized culture. It's just like a lot of different types of people ride mopeds.
Right. Or it's like you're not even really riding a vehicle, you know?
Yeah,
but
something about the fact that it's like an automatic vehicle makes it like less hardcore to some people. When really it's just like, that's the funny thing, is a lot of people will ride mopeds and find it less dangerous than motorcycles when it's kind of, I mean, exposure-wise, it's the same amount of risk.
Right.
And if anything, with motorcyclists, you can accelerate out of the way sooner if there's a hazard. There's more visibility for you. You tend to be higher up, and people tend to like hear you as you're coming. And I know I went to UW-Madison. It was like Moped City,
I bet,
which was really funny. I only saw like a handful of motorcycles there while I was there. And that's kind of what I wanted, because there's like limited parking and stuff. So it would have been really easy for me to have a bike out there.
Right.
But I suppose the time just wasn't quite right. So the long answer to the question was that I got back on the street, I want to say, and I like did dirt biking a little bit in between. But I got my like motorcycle endorsement. I did a class. So that was nice, because the biggest leap from, you know, dirt biking to the street is obviously like traffic.
Oh yeah.
And so it was great to, in simulate environments, be able to just like that rhythm of signaling and like downshifting and all this stuff. So it was good to get over that anxiety. And I think I did that in 2016. So this is my fourth season, and I've owned 2 bikes, but I've ridden, you know, a lot of different kinds of bikes.
Yeah, because that was the motorcycle. Like, I would love to have a motorcycle and ride around. The thing that always intimidated me was like, is it really hard to learn how to ride it?
No, it's really not. The hardest thing is, I'd say maybe there's extra skills, like small space turning is a little bit difficult. There's one thing that they have.
They're heavy. They're massive.
Yeah, right? Well, it all kind of depends, because I was just realizing this the other day. I've been mostly riding my Ducati for a little while now, and it's got different kind of handlebars. And I forgot about the fact that makes certain kinds of handling more difficult than others. And so sometimes you think you just like get into your habits, and I thought that I was just getting like worse at small space maneuvering, but then I realized that all the other bikes I've ridden have this really broad range of movement, and I can make really great small space turns. So what's cool about Wisconsin is like the motorcycle community is so strong, and the motorcycle education system is really strong. So I could take like a second level riding course with my bike, And I think that would be really helpful because it just handles a little bit differently. So they tend to they want to stay up. I think actually when you try to do something too slow is when something goes wrong.
Sure.
I've done that small space maneuvering in a parking lot, and then I suddenly am going too slow and I just tip over. Yeah, I did that on my brother's bike once. And it wasn't damaged or anything because I tipped over in slow motion. But he's like, why'd you do that? And I always thought if I just blip the throttle just a little bit, I wouldn't have fallen over.
Yeah.
So it's the mental blocks, I think, usually that stop you. But shifting and just the kind of mechanics of it is pretty straightforward. And it's just I don't know, it's like breathing.
Yeah.
You can have better breathing technique, but you can also do it without thinking about it. So.
Right. Yeah, because I had a similar experience, not on a motorcycle, but on an actual clip and pedal bike, where I fell in slow motion. I was at it. You know what?
It's embarrassing, but it's everybody's been there. They're oh, there they go.
But the sheer panic that happens when you're doing that, and it's all happening slowly, and you're like slowly going down. You can't get your feet out. Mm-hmm. Yeah, happened to me.
Oh, so you were clipped in, so you couldn't put. That's funny.
Yeah. They're like, oh, you'll get the hang of it, because I used to speed skate, and we used to do cool. Ride road bikes, off season training, land training, and so I was at a stop sign. And I'm I really hope this light turns really quickly because I'm already stopped. And I was just getting used to him. Yeah. And then just slowly fell down. But you create content around motorcycles too.
Yeah. So my day job, so to speak, because it's a day, night, weekend, I'm going to be doing work for it tonight, is it's consulting. I tend to do mostly design and front end development and things like that for websites.
Sure.
But I do a lot of consulting on content that companies make. And so remember a newer client came up to me and asked me if I had ever built anything from the ground up.
Sure.
A lot of my clients tend to be established because that's the time when they can afford a web developer or someone working, remote to do these kind of more robust software integrations. That's a lot of what I do is e-commerce actually. It's just and I love that. So when it came to doing content stuff, part of it was me just wanting to have a case study of this is starting from basically nothing, building it from the ground up, and a strategic approach to it, and leveraging search engine optimization. Sure. So that's a real technical back end of it. Yeah. The core of it all. So that's just a fun. There's no way this can go wrong if nobody watches. I learned that my technique is wrong, or at least I just got a little bit better at editing, or if anything, more so the editing workflow, because I've edited videos for a long, long time just for fun and for myself, but managing just more and more files and all that is kind of just you have to work through that in real time and do it.
Right.
But with the Instagram account and YouTube, they all kind of started from just wanting to try something out. I started doing, I started treating my account less as a personal account and more as kind of a professional presence.
Sure.
When I started doing motorcycle self-portraits. That was really fun for me. I've always taken travel photos and photos of other people, and I wanted to get better at just being in front of the camera, and I wanted to catalog the experience of riding the bike because it's uncommon, and that's the thing worth sharing. I mean, anything's potentially worth sharing and people will find value in it. But I knew that it would be silly for me not to catalog this. I'd be going against every natural bone in my body not to incorporate photography into my motorcycle experience. And they go hand in hand in such a cool way because each one pushes the other. When I'm riding, it gives me more interesting things to photograph, and I can go on little missions and tuck in places I wouldn't usually. Just sometimes walking somewhere instead of driving somewhere is a different experience. Riding somewhere, you can get off-road and go cool places. And then having the kind of photography end of it, that pushes me to catalog the experience, to make interesting compositions, to challenge myself kind of cerebrally while I'm in these places. I'm okay, how can I make the same place look different or make it look that someone else took the photo?
Sure.
A lot of people don't realize that they're self-portraits. So I think eventually I do want to compile that and make it a significant album or something that goes out in a show, or I don't know. We'll see where it goes. But I would like to at least start like printing out them and sharing them with people like offline. That's the thing. I'm trying to push more offline experiences.
Yeah, because what I've noticed, especially about your videos and your content in general, it gets shared a ton. Like, is it a very supportive community, like the motorcycle community, or is it because you're so unique that is there less women in motorcycle?
There's definitely
a lot of factors
in it. I'm like uncommon in the niche, and being like, you know, English speaking, having an Italian bike that's a little bit, I don't want to call it rare, but it's uncommon. Yeah. It's an uncommon bike. It was hard for me to get, and I know other people are interested in it.
Ducati Scrambler?
Yeah, it's a Ducati Scrambler Cafe Racer. First year they made it.
Wow.
And now it's a different bike. The 2019, it just like looks totally different. So they only made my bike the way they made it for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
And so it is, you know, it is a little bit special for that reason. So I knew, being a young female motorcyclist, a lot of female motorcyclists tend not to get into it until their 30s and 40s or even later. And oftentimes they'll choose Harley. Being like as long-legged as I am, I can ride a broader variety of bikes. So there's just like a lot of different things that allows me to kind of stand out. Sure. And then on top of all that, I've got the technical background to just like market the content.
Right.
So there's a lot of reasons, I think, why it worked out well for me. And I think, I mean, one factor too is that I try to do it pretty authentically. Sure. I just try to like be myself, and it's easy to do because you just like put a camera on yourself and you're doing something else, so it doesn't feel that performative.
Sure.
It feels more performative when the camera is the other direction. I like that I can be the camera person and do my commentary at the same time.
Sure.
It's
like the moto vlogs that you do and stuff like that.
Yeah, so the moto vlogs are awesome because you just strap the GoPro on and you go about your daily life, and I'm just basically like stream of consciousness, having ideas.
Right, just whatever you think of.
Yeah, and I do try to edit them in a way that's a little bit more of a storytelling type thing, or kind of have a mood or have a little adventure. They tend to just be like a little adventure because I do enjoy content of people just being on the bike and talking about anything.
Yeah.
But I want the motovlog to be something distinctly different. Like, oh, if I could have had this exact same message delivered, but I'm sitting down, like, what does the motovlog add to it? Right. And I think like the adventure element and the kind of the POV and like, look at this, look at that. So I like to do more kind of city tours. I think that's another factor too. The fact that I'm in Milwaukee. It's a huge motorcycle city. Harley's here. And then the Royal Enfield North American headquarters just opened up here about 3 years ago, I want to say.
Yeah. Those bikes are really cool.
Yeah, they're really cool. The new bikes, they're on tour and they're doing a big event coming up soon. So I'll definitely be at that.
Nice.
But yeah, I think that's why it's going well.
Yeah. Because I mean, some of the videos that you've made have over like 100,000 views. Like, was your expectation like going in? Like, did you know all that going in? Like,
well, I definitely didn't think the one that did really pop off would.
Which one was that, by the way?
There's one where I did kind of just like a walk around tour of my bike. It was pretty much the first video that I did kind of more like out in the wild and actually, cause I eased into it. First I had, it's funny how stuff is really difficult and then until you just do it and then it's second nature. Yeah. But I just hated being on camera. I hated hearing myself. I hated looking at myself. Really? I just like, it's awful. I still kind of don't like it. And if I'm out of practice for a while, it's hard to want to do it again. So the motovlogs are easy because I'm like on camera without being on camera.
Right.
But it's just like, you know, you just got to get over it. But I just rode out to this area of Milwaukee called Jones Island, where they've got, it's just like industrial and kind of remote. And it's like really open, cool streets to ride down, and then a little off-roading area. Well, just gravel. And so I just like walked around my bike and showed the modifications I've made because I found no information online on how to do it. And I mean, I didn't even do a proper tutorial of it. I just showed and talked about the extra pieces you would need. So I was both like delivering valuable information to the people who have this bike and want to swap out these like number panels. Yeah. And that's like the first thing people want to do with this bike because everyone runs around with the same number. Everyone comes with the number 54, and there's a, you know, historical significance to that with Ducati and racing bikes in like the 60s and 70s. But it does look kind of silly when every single cafe racer has the same number. So a lot of people wanted to swap that out. So I did that, and I just showed it. And I just did the video on my phone. I didn't have a GoPro yet. And that just ended up really, really taking off. I did distribute it a couple places. There's like Scrambler forums, and there's different little places all over the internet where people are looking for this information. And I think that's the big takeaway is the fact that you want to, for me, the main things, it's like it either has to be entertaining, informative, or funny. Like, and that can fall into entertainment. But if I'm like missing any of those elements, like if it just feels completely pointless, if it just feels like, I know, kind of like an art project and nobody connects with it, or it's an art project type thing, but it's just too specific. Sure. I like things to be informative, and that's honestly the stuff that gets seen the most. Right. Kind of been doing well, not lately, but I want to stick to a pattern of a little bit, one for you, one for me type scenario where I'm doing more tutorial and how-to kind of stuff paired with just kind of more fun lifestyle stuff, because people are looking for the tutorial stuff. I think that's where a lot of people fail with content marketing and content making in general, is they kind of see it as it is a tool of self-expression, but they don't realize that if they do genuinely want to grow it in a real way, it has to be searchable. And a lot of people, they don't write up their descriptions. They try to make these kind of like enticing titles that don't really mean anything. And once you have a following, a weird, obscure title would be interesting to people. But when you're just kind of pitching yourself,
no one's going to look for that.
No one's going to look for it. And no one's going to look for like, what does Meghan Stark think about this? It's got to be me unveiling this new thing, or me test riding these bikes for the first time, like my experience on this kind of bike, or my experience, comparing things. And
it goes back to authenticity too, Yeah,
absolutely. And that's another thing to try, like, toe the line of, I think it's helpful that I come from a place of not being too technical when it comes to bikes. I'm technical with other things. Right. But with the whole kind of like engineering aspect of bikes and honing in on like performance elements, I definitely talk about bikes in a more kind of lifestyle and philosophical and experiential way. Right. Because there's tons of people talking about the technical stuff and they're doing it better and they've got a team of people. Right. So I don't...
It's what you know. It's what you experience.
Yeah, do what you know. And then learn along the way too, especially when, I just learned this and this is influencing this. Like me remembering that clip-on handlebars are bad for small space maneuvering. It's funny how much you forget and then relearn. And that's why people, for some reason, I always get surprised when people want to know. I get messages all the time. People are like, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? Should I do this? Should I do that? And even with web development, which is kind of like the tertiary level thing that I even talk about online, a lot of people want my opinion on things. And that's kind of the most surprising thing about all this. I suppose that's the point. You kind of establish yourself as a resource, and then people ask you more things. They want the resources.
Yeah, exactly. So once all those things, because even your Instagram as well, started kind of accumulating more followers and all that stuff, was there any sense of like pressure? Did you feel the same way you did at the beginning about it? The beginning
was all just like fun and experimental, and it felt like more of a photography project than a social media strategy kind of game. But then I did get into like hashtag research, and you could just like see the results. It's just, I kind of like so many of my hobbies and things I like to do, I end up kind of like gamifying. And I'm not competitive, but I just like, this is satisfying when things go well.
Right. When you like do the research and figure it out, and it ends up working out.
It's valuable information. And as a consultant, like that's great stuff to know. And I then taught that to clients of mine and leveraged that as like income. So I think there, if anything, I'm kind of here and there about social media sometimes, because I'm a private person, but I'm also really transparent. Sure. So it's hard for me to navigate that, because I don't want to offer up too much of myself and regret that, or share too deep of things, but I also still want to just like be myself. So I think that's why and you don't have to make content about yourself online. And that's why, like, like sticking to the motorcycle stuff, but little parts of me filter in. I think that's a good way to do it. But ever so often it does get, because, you know, everyone's got an opinion and you just hear things all day long. And for the most part, it's pretty easy to tune out because it's like really random stuff most of the time.
Or people you don't know.
Yeah, people you don't know. And it's good to still read it so that you can kind of, you know, gauge how things are being reacted to. Because I did take a video down recently because I used the term moped interchangeably with scooter, and I just did that earlier. Oh. But they're distinctly different.
Just so you know.
Yeah. Most people, and especially maybe outside the US or maybe even outside the Midwest, because I did a little poll on my Instagram and all the Midwesterners like kind of use it interchangeably, and everywhere else people are like, no, a scooter is the thing we were actually talking about. And a moped is one of those kind of like motorized bicycles that you can like pedal or...
I never even heard of that before.
Yeah, there's like... I mean...
Like electric bikes?
Yeah, kind of like... Well, but they're gas. So, and there are electric bikes too.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that, where there's a motor component, but then you can also pedal it. And sometimes I think it helps charge it. I'm trying to even think
of what that looks like.
They're like not that common.
Right.
At least
Come
not
on,
around
people,
here.
Relax.
Yeah. So I was being like lambasted, and people were kind of like, there's a bigger world outside the US. For some reason, like people make a lot of assumptions about you, and my audience is really international. Like most of it, I think only... On pretty much both platforms, only 40% of the people who follow me are from the US.
Right.
And so they just kind of have opinions about, they think people in America aren't very well traveled or don't have a global perspective. And I don't want to...
That's also their opinion too, though, you know?
Yeah, it's not necessarily right. And the funny thing is, I could talk extensively about my travels, but I don't want to have to I don't have to...
Defend yourself or like...
Yeah, definitely. So I think that'll filter in, and it's kind of one of those things where no matter what you do, you can't really control other people's opinion of you.
Well, yeah, you can't please everyone. You know?
Absolutely. And I think that's a good headspace, and that's one good learning thing, because I just, you know, when you do branding and consulting and stuff, half of it is about creating a continuity amongst an image and curating things to give people a certain impression about things.
Right.
So it feels bad when you're misunderstood, but you're always going to be a little bit misunderstood because of language or symbols or other people's values, or they didn't listen or they misinterpreted something. So it is a good exercise in just being like, oh, I'm going to lose a good 20% of people. They just don't get it. And that's fine.
Yeah. I think I used to be very scared about that. When I first started like creating content and stuff, and I was so nervous. Like I did this whole series about like mental health because I deal with like OCD and anxiety and stuff. So I did like a 30-day series about mental health, and some of them got posted on Upworthy and stuff like,
oh, wow.
like legitimate,
that's
like
exciting.
cool. Yeah, it was cool. And then, but with that came all of these people that, you know, just the internet's full of people that are just mad, you know?
Yeah. People find catharsis in ways that
and just shitting on people. And I never understood it, but like, so now I'm just at a point where it's just like, if someone doesn't like what I do, well, that's fine. There's another person that does, you know?
Some people never really get to experience that because they kind of like stay in a bit of a bubble. And of course it gets disrupted
scary.
every so. Yeah. It feels awful. I remember the first time that I ever shared my writings, or I remember the first time publishing YouTube videos and just like feeling that anxiety about it.
Right.
And now I just like set it and forget it and like come back in a couple hours. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Like these people are here for me. This person didn't get it. This person has like a very accurate critique, a really worthwhile thing to hear. And so it is nice when you can kind of just filter it out and figure it out for yourself. But then sometimes it does become the Wild West. And that's the video, because I think at the time that the video really hit, my channel wasn't even monetized yet. So I don't even know what a viral video feels like in AdSense. But AdSense is like not the way to make money. I love teaching people how to make money online. I'm like, that ain't it. But yeah, on that video, I think it's like, I mean, it's getting closer and closer to 200,000 because the SEO is solid. So even after those viral moments, it's evened out, but it continues to get viewed because it's like, it's worthwhile information. But I think a lot of it is just like, dudes online being weird and saying weird stuff to me. So I just don't go back there. And I figured out how to filter out certain words. And so it's a little, on YouTube and stuff, it's a little bit less hostile, but people are creative and they use words I've never even heard before.
Or they put like, they misspell them on purpose.
So it like gets through.
Yeah.
So Yeah, and I think it would be cool one of these days, like if this continues to go, because I know I'm kind of here and there about it. It's a cool way to ultimately boost my business. That's kind of
for sure.
the sneaky back end of it. Well, there's a couple sneaky motives. So I want to get more women into riding, and the fact that I know that women just like to research the heck out of stuff before they do things, especially kind of big things or things that are not encouraged for women.
Sure.
A lot of people tend to need not quite permission, but they want access to it through something. Like, I want to pre-experience this. I feel that a lot with the women in my life, or at least some of them. They kind of just want to know everything to maybe expect, to set the expectations. I think a lot more guys are just willing to just jump into it. Like, doesn't matter if I had a cousin who's done it. Like, I'm going to do it.
Right.
And a lot of women are like, oh, well, I won't get into it unless I have access to it. Or
my idea is like, it's already so socially not acceptable that they want to make sure it's really, really something they want to do before they have to go through all the shit of people like shitting on them for doing it.
Yeah. And some of it is preparing for all those extra questions people are going to have about you. Have to do a little bit of justification, but then,
because as a guy, I can just hop on a bike and everybody's cool with it.
Yeah,
no one cares.
No one like asks like why or how
I'm doing it.
Yeah, like, what's your motive for this? But to me, I know I just have such a solid community of people around me, and it's just a lot of people have now met me after the bike or because of the bike. So there's not really the same. I don't deal with like normies anymore. No, I do, but there's fewer and fewer people who are like baffled by the whole concept of it, and especially in Milwaukee, I suppose. Like, but then when I do travel, I tend to do motorcycle things. But when it's like not as shocking and it's growing to be less not stigmatized, because I don't think it was quite stigmatized. Like, some people, if anything, it gets stigmatized for mothers for some reason.
From mothers or
for mothers.
Oh,
so
for mothers.
A lot of times people expect women to stop riding once they have kids. And I can't really speak from that perspective, but I do see that, and people like act like it's irresponsible. I'm like, what about dads? Like,
if dads they die, who cares?
I was like, what is all that? You're
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, how irresponsible! You have children. It's like he's most. I know tons of moto dads.
That is funny.
I think motorcyclists are mostly dads.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting. Because yeah. I guess that is the assumption that the mom is more important in the social or in the family construct than the dad is, or something.
Or at least like,
because if the dad goes, who cares? But if mom goes, then everything is just terrible.
Yeah, it's a weird. I don't know where people are coming from with that specifically, but So one motive for making all this stuff is to get more women into it, and it's so cool because like, there is all that garbage that comes through, and I just got to be like, okay, thanks for like. For some reason, someone's lately been really wanting to take me out for avocado toast, which is like, in the grand scheme of people harassing, that's a very nice harassment. So I eventually finally said like, that's very kind of you. Instead of just ignoring it and be like, oh, but I'm like, it's not that creepy. Like, cause I've had some stuff, and when I do share the cute like things that people say to me, people are like, oh, it's not that bad. I'm like, there's stuff that I just can't say.
This is just one comment.
Yeah, this is the stuff I feel comfortable sharing because I don't want to spread that bad energy.
Right. Or just show people like this is what is happening. Because I feel like that just more people come. Yeah.
Because then once you start kind of complaining about it, people are like, oh, it affects you. Like, I'm going to do more of this. So
I'm getting to you. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. So it's so like ignoring is. Oh man, like, people hate being ignored.
But it's also from. At least from my perspective, it was like the hardest thing to do is to not say something sometimes. And, to just like, even though it's the best option sometimes.
Well, the hardest thing, because I love not saying things.
Okay.
I try to be pretty careful. But sometimes it like depends on my headspace, and I'm feeling like a little tired or slap happy or like outgoing. I'll also say anything. But when it comes to online, I try to be, I'm not very like trigger happy or responsive. So I think that's a good thing. I think it's because I don't use Twitter. I feel like Twitter like enables that like knee jerk, and I haven't used Twitter since like college, and I would just use it to just stream of consciousness, whatever jokes I had workshopping. But when it comes to people like commenting online, I tend to just ignore it. And if it's just someone clearly trolling, I'll sometimes delete it or I'll just leave it. But the thing about leaving it is that someone else can swoop in. That's the thing about being a female motorcyclist. I think people kind of, they want to assume like a dad role kind of, and they want to like defend you. I think that happens with people online a lot when people are kind of fans of you, or they just want to keep you safe. It's a nice sentiment, but then it just gets messy. So then I have to delete things anyways.
Right. It's like if you comment on someone's comment on the internet, you already lost. Like you can't win.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, it's they're not going to change their mind. They're not going to change who they are. How they commented is how
you can see by their language or by their tone, like you can just see what they're working with and if they're open to an actual discussion or and sometimes people are brutal but right, and that's why I took down the moped versus scooter thing, because this guy was like really brutal critique, and other people are like, they just had, you know, kind of more tepid responses, like, oh, I don't know, like we all call them this, but it was definitely right, and that's, you know, it's always good to grow and learn, and no one knows everything, and but some people are totally full of crap, and you can ignore them.
Right? Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, though. Not everyone knows everything, even the people commenting on videos. You know?
I see that a lot.
They can be wrong, too.
Or a lot of people, and this is kind of classic. Some people do call it mansplaining, but I think it's just classic know-it-all. Like, people just like to be know-it-alls. I mean, no shade to my grandma, but I like to joke that my grandma mansplains things to me. You know, I like went to school for graphic design for 4 years, but she'll tell me like what my logo should be. And I'm like, oh, well, it's this. She goes, no, it should be this. I'm too late.
Every grandma in the world.
Yeah. So people, especially people a little bit older, they like to tell younger people what to do. And it's always good to just like be open ears, but you don't have to absorb everything. So, yeah, definitely there's people, or like a lot of people, it's tough. It's tough making YouTube videos because I wanted it to be the one thing that I don't have to be neurotic about. I thought it was going to be the one thing that I could make shitty and everything would be fine.
Right.
But then it got out of hand, and now I've like made some nice ones, and people are like, "Oh, make it like this all the time." Like, oh no, it took me so long.
Exactly.
The editing is insane, and just like, yeah, when you hit a certain quality, then people expect you to continue to meet that, and it is another one of those things, those 360 image thing. And I'm like, well, as a web developer and content strategist, like, shouldn't I be making nice polished content? But I'm also still a team of one. And I only just upgraded to a camera that can autofocus in live mode. So I had a video where like I was just a little bit out of focus.
Do people roast you for that?
Well, I didn't totally get roasted, but will someone explain to me in depth about focal length? And I'm like, I know. I was like, and honestly, sometimes I don't care if I'm out of focus, because this was me like going over my helmet motovlog setup. So I was like, the helmet and the camera were in focus, but I was slightly out of focus, and I was like, that's the dream. I always want to be slightly out of focus. But you know, other people want to like see me in focus, so I get where they're coming from.
So yeah, what we can also talk about your clothing brand.
Yes.
Which is Great Lake, right? Not Lakes.
Great Lake Supply Co. Well, it kind of rolls off the tongue, and I don't mind that people sometimes call it Great Lakes, because it just having supply as the next word leads you into that. But from a URL perspective, like I knew like a plumbing company weird.
Or something, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah, I'm trying to beat them in SEO. I've got to move the site and do some extra stuff. But you know, duty calls. I've had a lot of web development projects lately, and that's also good. But it kind of pumps the brakes on certain projects. So I haven't had time to make, in the moving and all the stuff, I haven't had time to make a video. But so with Great Lake Supply Co., I have pretty big ambitions for it. So right now it's only online, and the whole kind of idea started, I had these like ideas knocking around in my head of kind of converging coffee culture and moto culture, which already exists, because there's a type of bike called a cafe racer, which I have, and those are basically, it's a styling and somewhat of a performance choice. So they were notorious in England a long time ago, and they were distinct because they'd been optimized for performance more so than comfort. So these like low clip-on handlebars, like really streamlined look. They often have like a racing cowl on the back, so it's just like a one-up kind of seating situation. And they're naked bikes, and you know, back then they didn't really put many fairings on bikes in the first place. But now,
what does it mean to be naked?
What does it mean to be naked? No, it is like a whole philosophy too, though. I've gone into that for sure. But a lot of more modern bikes have plastic fairings and all these kind of bits and bobs that aren't, they're not, well, they are functional for, you know, streamlining and like, you know, wind deflection and keeping the wind out of your face and like comfort. Cause when you're being slammed by the wind the whole time, it can be a little bit uncomfortable. So a lot of touring bikes will have big windscreens and naked bikes don't have any of that. They're stripped down. It's just like the basics. You can see the tank. There's nothing covering it. It's just kind of all the essentials. Okay. So it's an aesthetic choice, and sometimes they're retro inspired, but sometimes they're not. There's a growing kind of look of these Street Fighter-esque bikes, which look very like kind of cut up, and I think like maybe the Japanese bike manufacturers really pioneered that style of naked but not retro looking. Okay. So it's a cool subculture. So not all cafe racer, well, pretty much all cafe racers are naked bikes, but not all naked bikes are cafe racers. Sure. And other than the styling stuff about the cafe racers, there is this whole kind of other culture. At least nowadays, it tends to be people who like more of a vintage retro style. But back when they were a new thing to ride around, people, they were called cafe racers apparently because people would like race each other to different cafes. Okay. So it was a cute little thing. And I don't know if it was like, oh, I'll race you here, and if the espresso gets cold, then you lost. But that's kind of where the term originated. And I just love like coffee meets motorcycling. It makes so much sense to me. Right. So I had all these ideas. So one of the designs I'm wearing, it's a spade with latte art inside of it. So these kind of like spades and clubs and that kind of stuff is pretty big in motorcycling. And just there's this place called Ace Cafe, and a lot of people were telling me like, you should do a club version of this, but I'm like, oh, the spade is my thing, and the club is Ace Cafe. So it would be cool to visit them one of these days. I think they have a location in London, I want to say, but then they might also be in the US. I haven't really looked into them that much.
Is it a chain, or is it just a couple?
I think it's just they have like more than one location, but it's not. I don't think it's a chain or anything like that. These designs were kind of knocking around in my head, and I have this background in graphic design and branding and identity. So I'm just like, okay, I'm going to make these, and it would be fun to put them on shirts. That'd be cool. Mm-hmm. But then, I had the logo concept. It's just like, it's like if you give a mouse a cookie, just one thing led to another. And I spent a significant amount of time in June and July of last summer, really perfecting the designs and ordering samples and getting it down pat. And then so right now it's e-commerce, and it's cool. A lot of people ask me where most of my orders come from. They assume Wisconsin because I'm here and because there's a lot of people who ride here. But I have orders going out all over the world, and that was one cool thing about building this business and then being able to incorporate that into the content that I make. And that's like kind of the best thing to do, is to have a kind of product to sell or something to buoy up, something that you're like working towards people getting excited about. Not just, it is cool to just be like a personality, but that's not really my goal. Because I can just be a personality in my regular life. Like I don't need 100,000 people watching it. And but with Great Lakes Supply Co., orders go out to Ireland, the UK, like Perth, Australia. People are asking me if I can ship to the Canary Islands and like Spain. Just like very obscure places. I saw a draft of an order that might go out to Saudi Arabia, and I thought that was crazy. I was like, how the heck is someone in Saudi Arabia watching me? But people all over, like Malaysia, the Philippines, a lot India, because like they just like love motorcycles in India, especially Royal Enfield. And so I'm excited to do some Royal Enfield videos for the Indian viewers. So orders have been going out all over the world. And I want this, I was talking about wanting to bridge the gap between online and real life experiences, because that's just really important for me. I was internet kid, raised on the internet, very indoors. Like I just have more profound experiences in real life with people. And I work on the computer all the time. I just always want to get off the computer. And I'll do anything. I'll like clean my whole house to just like
to get a break.
That's kind of how I started. I was working like a handful of shifts a week at a local coffee shop here, and that was like one of the best ways for me to meet people and to feel like productive while also just like not being at the computer. And doing web development, and especially remote web development, I wasn't like meeting anyone new in town. A lot of my clients were in like Texas and Iowa and other places. And now I do have like a really awesome Milwaukee client that I love working with. And I have like built a really solid network, and especially with like riding and meeting people in the riding community here.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like bridging that gap and making more offline experiences. So I want Great Lakes Supply Co. ultimately to be a retail space, a physical retail space, and that has a cafe component.
Oh, cool.
We do have Fuel Cafe here, but it's mostly restaurant. Yeah. And then they have their merchandise up front. But this would be like full-fledged retail, a little bit more like kind of like a unisex, like menswear-esque kind of stuff.
Okay.
I always find that stuff to be unisex, but maybe some other people don't. But I've got a good relationship with Thorogood Boots, and those are American-made boots. Well, they're made in Merrill, Wisconsin, actually, which is really cool. Some of their styles are like Red Wing Heritage, and I think they started around the same time.
Okay.
So I would love to be a retailer for Thorogood. There's like, leather jacket companies I'd love to work with, and then develop like really original products of my own. Obviously, the designs for my products are original, but I'm not designing the shirt and manufacturing that.
Sure.
So just embroidering and screen printing and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but,
the embroiders are really cool.
Yeah,
I haven't seen them. And
a lot of people like they don't realize until they see it in person or until they see a really close up image. But yeah, the embroidered shirts have gone really well. Like a lot of people like them. And but yeah, I want it to be a cafe and ultimately kind of a bit of a hangout spot, like how Rochambeau is kind of just like a fixture of the community. A lot of people just hang around and they have certain expectations. Like they come in because they love the staff and they love the vibe, and people will have coffee and stay for a while. You can go there and see like 10 people that you know. And I kind of want to be a hub like that, because the new Fuel Cafe is super nice and super cool, but it's kind of blown open the doors on the whole thing. And it's less of a, I'll probably see like a buddy there, and more just like really anybody comes in. Right. Which is cool.
The thing I have about Fuel Cafe is that like I like it there a lot, and I would like to sit outside. I like to sit outside, but like inside, the music is so loud that it's like it's hard to sit there for a while. And
I'm a sensitive person. And it's hard for me to not just like listen to the music. Or just not be able to focus on one thing. Or sometimes if music is too loud, I can't taste my food.
Really?
Not like I can't taste it completely.
It's gone numb, guys.
Yeah. No, I kind of like isolated sensory experiences. And so that is one cool thing about having like a physical cafe, is that I could have these, one thing about buying motorcycle gear, especially as a female rider, is you want to feel the material, you want to see how it fits on you, and you want to feel good in it. There's certain products that look amazing and you can buy them online and they suit some people, but they don't suit others.
Sure.
I went all the way to Brooklyn. Well, not just to do this, because I just love going to New York.
Yeah.
But I went to this place called Jane Moto in Brooklyn, which is, they're functionally like, they would be like the brother store kind of. They're doing the concept that I want to bring here.
Sure.
About 20% of their business is selling coffee. They have espresso there. And then I think close to like 60 or more % of it is retail. They sell, helmets, jackets, riding pants, riding boots. And then they also do custom bikes there.
Oh, that's cool.
That's something that probably could do down the line, but right now that is like not my lane.
Right. How does custom bikes even work? Like make them from scratch, or is there like a body and then you kind of tweak it?
It all kinds of depends. I think most people, when they do custom bikes, they start with like a vintage bike, and then you just start swapping things out style wise. But then sometimes people really do build a bike basically from scratch. I'm watching someone who's doing that over in Brooklyn, actually.
Oh, yeah.
And just like hodgepodging a lot of really interesting different pieces together onto the same bike. And basically, I think the rule, because you have to be able to tell the government or whatever what it is.
Yeah.
So I think either it's the engine or the frame that determines what bike it's registered as.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that, but I think that's it.
Well, I will. And I'll have the internet come after you if you're wrong. They will be after you.
Yeah. It's like, I'm totally fine saying what I don't know. And that one I'm not totally sure on. But Yeah. So custom bikes, my brother's a mechanical engineer.
Oh, that's cool.
And so he's got tons of ideas for products for me that he wants to make. And then my mom is she used to be a seamstress. She still does.
Does she do that stuff for you?
No, I outsource this right now, but I want to bring it to Wisconsin, or I outsource it to like North Carolina right now.
I gotcha.
But I want to bring it to Wisconsin once things get bigger.
Sure.
Right now, things are growing and it's exciting, but it's also just like, whoa, like as things grow, you got to throw more money at it in different ways. Of course, and I'm just funding the whole thing myself. So I'm like, all right, I got to do some more web development so I can put the money into this. And it's cool because it's like keeping pace. Oops, sorry. It's keeping pace with the growth, which is cool. So I don't ever feel like I'm out money, and I actually think I'm technically not. But it's still a pretty new business. So I definitely don't want to, overhype like the success thus far, but the reach is impressive, I gotta say. And so I can just see if things continue to grow as they are, and it's kind of starting to look a bit exponential, it'll be pretty exciting thing.
Is how long down the road is that like a goal for you? Like
I'm kind of at a crossroads because I love that idea. Like with e-commerce, if I needed to change my whole life about this, I could just like close up shop in a moment. And I do have a lot of in-person inventory right now, but I could just like clear it all out and I would be out no money. It's really cool that I can have low overhead doing online business and then kind of using my office space as like a bit of a showroom. I could see it being a physical space by the end of the year, or at least like start building it out. But I kind of also like the idea of having just the coffee as a pop-up and still doing this kind of showroom thing where I'll host maybe like an open showroom event and people can come in and shop. But if I do want to start selling more of other people's items, then it's got to be a physical space. And that's like half the point of the experience. So, I mean, I'm always looking at spots, and I've got, the business plan. So we'll see. It's pretty up in the air right now. But I would love to be able to have the physical space, because then we can bring people in for like workshops and cool, after hours type things. And
what would you call it? Is it going to be
sometimes I think it would be Great Lake Cafe, but it would be stronger to me just being Great Lake Supply Co. And then people come in, they go, oh, there's coffee here. Like sure. It would be kind of registered more as a retail space, because that would be kind of the bigger point of it. But motorcycle stuff, they're big ticket items. Like it'd be hard to walk out without spending hundreds of dollars. So I want people to still feel like they can come in even if they don't have hundreds of dollars to spend. So I'll probably like cover some more like fun lifestyle stuff, like locally made candles and stuff like that. But the coffee, I think, is what would bring everybody together, and people just swoop in, and I think it would be a really great experience. And I know people are kind of thirsting for the kind of like female hub for all of that. And it wouldn't obviously be an exclusively female place.
It's a club.
It's like, you're not in.
Sorry.
No, I want it to just be this like more universal space. But for it to be a resource for women, because that's like,
that's what you're looking to push.
People put that on me because like I'm a female writer, and I don't mind it, but I try to make things relatively universal, and maybe I'll lean into it a bit more and talk more specifically about my experience. But I don't know if I've had that. Like, I think I've kind of had an atypical female writing experience, or at least from what I've seen online. I think part of it plays into the fact that Milwaukee is pretty progressive and it's really welcoming. And I don't know, I don't get like the same microaggressions that maybe other female writers do. And then the online experience of being a female writer is totally different than the in-person. Like online, it's kind of hostile. And in person, people are just like excited and it's just fun. Like bike people, they just want to talk to anybody who rides. And so it's a great conversation starter. And first, people coming up to me, I was like, oh, why are you coming up to me? But I just know they're like, they see my bike.
Because you're ready for them to like fight you or something based on online comments.
Well, and this was before I even really started posting online. I just didn't know why strangers would come up to me on the street. It just like makes you uncomfortable. But then now I know, well, this bike is cool and they want to ask me about it. So it's almost always pretty innocent.
So I was going to ask the online versus the in-person experience. Are you getting people as well on your channels, on your social media, that aren't necessarily people that like bike stuff? Like they just like kind of are interested, or
that happens a little bit more on Instagram than it does on YouTube, because I think YouTube is like a bigger investment, like a bigger time investment. You're like, I kind of got to be into this to want to spend this much time doing it.
But I watch your moto vlogs, and I don't really necessarily like bikes, and I thought they were really cool.
Yeah, I try to make them, like I said, kind of more...
It's more of like a tour of Milwaukee, you know?
Yeah, and so many people just don't know what's up with Milwaukee. But I love to give people a lens into Milwaukee. And sometimes I think like, oh man, I kind of like do all the same stuff all the time. But it's interesting to other people. Or like I have the same kind of route. Right, so now it's encouraging me to branch out a little bit.
And for you to explore too, kind of.
Yeah, definitely. And I just like exploring on my own. And I'd be doing that even without the... social media stuff because of the camera stuff, and something about cataloging something makes you do more. And I think it just kind of motivates you. It gives you a little bit of extra purpose, and then you have this like evidence to look back on it, like, oh, I did this cool little thing. And then one of my favorite videos I ever made was my friend Narissa and I went riding on Black Friday, and we went down to Jones Island, where they have the big mounds of salt, and it's cool because the road salt, and so it gets kind of oxidized because it's sitting out there partially tarped and partially exposed to elements. Yeah. So it gets all blue looking, and it looks like these beautiful space mountains. And I've taken so many photos there because it's so cool looking. Yeah. But I had taken her there for the first time. So it was cool that we could just be like excited about it together, and we're just having fun and being silly. And then I edited it. I tried to be like, I don't know. I was very precise with the way I edited it. Sure. And I tried to make it this kind of cool story. And at the end, it feels a little bit surreal. And I like made the music a little strange too. And I love that one so much. And a lot of times, like, people are saying like, whoa, you're onto something here. So I hope I can continue to do that, make it feel like you're watching a movie. Right. It's just like people would watch, plenty of films that stuff has nothing to do with them, but it's a compelling narrative, or the characters are interesting, or
it's entertaining,
human experience. You know? Entertaining.
Yeah. But no, like your stuff, your clothing and all that stuff is really cool. I love the crew neck sweater. Yeah. It's like maroon? Is that the color scheme?
Yeah. And I'm really sad the manufacturer's discontinuing it.
Oh, I better buy one. Are there any left?
I'm wrecked. Well, yeah, there are. Okay. But all out of smalls in the maroon, the best color. Don't need a small, so I'm good.
And
it's unisex sizing. It's pretty much men's sizing.
Yeah. Yeah, but and the hat too, the winter hat. I love that, the gray hat. But so where can people find that stuff at?
Yeah, so they can find it at greatlakesupplyco.com, and I'm also on Instagram as Great Lake Supply Co. and as Stark Naked with 2 Ks in Naked, and then on YouTube as Meghan Stark, Meghan with an H.
Did you get a lot of Game of Thrones stuff thrown at you?
Yeah, well, I've got Iron Man, I've got Game of Thrones, Iron Man too, and then anyone who's a fan of James Dean might know that his character in Rebel Without a Cause is James Stark. So that's a lot of Starks. Yeah, I'm trying to know all the Stark knowledge, but it's a powerful name. It means strong in German. So
does it?
Yeah, I love Stark being my last name.
Wow. Yeah, because I didn't know really any Starks until Game of Thrones. That's the first time I heard the last name.
Yeah, and they're a good family. I haven't been keeping up.
I tried to aspire. Yeah. Well, it's over now,
Yeah. So. And I hear people are mixed about it. But I haven't watched, because it's kind of a traumatizing show to watch. And they're using my last name. So I feel like these people are my distant relatives. Right. And it's hard to watch that stuff happen to them sometimes.
What are you doing? Guys?
And my parents named their dog Sansa.
Oh, really?
So now I especially can't watch the show. Yeah.
Okay. I thought it was just maybe a happenstance too.
Who knew?
Who knew?
No, they knew.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We're musing with Arya, but there's too many syllables. But
Oh, okay. Yeah. So. Well, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I was about to say, I hope I didn't babble too much, but that's kind of the point.
That's kind of the point. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.